Yeah.
How many of you here today know that an adoption can cost up to 15 times more than an abortion? The average second trimester abortion costs roughly $1,200, while later term abortions can cost nearly $3,000 or more. An adoption can cost anywhere between $5,000 and $40,000. Personally, I think it's ridiculous that you should have to pay to adopt at all. If adoption were to be free, or at least significantly cheaper, I truly believe more expecting mothers would see it as a viable alternative. Some people try to argue that putting a child up for adoption sets them up for failure later in life. I believe the opposite can be true. Did you know many successful people were adopted? To name just a few, Apple founder Steve Jobs, actress Marilyn Monroe, and former President Bill Clinton, and many, many more. In a system where abortion seems like the only option, how could anyone who identifies as pro-life blame the expecting mothers? In the United States alone, over 60 million abortions have been performed since the 1973 decision in Roe v. Wade. Today alone, 2,363 babies will be aborted. That's a baby losing its life nearly every half a minute. Many people will try to argue that the baby is not alive, when in reality this is simply not true. An unborn baby fits every single criteria of life well within the first trimester. Harvard University Medical School professor Michelin Matthews Ross testified before a 1981 United States Senate Judiciary Committee, stating it is scientifically correct to say that an individual human life begins at conception, and that this developing human always is a member of our species in all stages of life. In other words, Matthews Ross was saying a baby is a baby, from fertilization to heartbeat to birth. Yes, the baby of 5 weeks in the womb differs from the newborn, but so does a toddler differ from the teen. Scientifically, we pass through different stages as we grow, but we don't pass from person to non-person or vice versa. With thousands more statements just like these, you would assume that we could all recognize and understand life begins at conception, correct? Unfortunately not. In its 1973 Roe v. Wade ruling, Supreme Court Justice Harry Blackmun ignored the science, stating, "We need not resolve the difficult question when life begins. The judiciary at this point in development of man's knowledge is not in a position to speculate." Because Blackmun dodged that question in his 1973 ruling, we're still arguing tirelessly over abortion today. The unborn child has its own DNA from the moment it is conceived, and has a detectable heartbeat between 18 and 22 days. Brain waves are detectable at 6 weeks. The skin is formed by 4 weeks old, and all organs are present at 7 weeks of age. Around 7 weeks from the child's conception, the child's arms and legs begin growth, as well as the vocal cords and inner ear beginning to form. At only 8 weeks old, the child can respond to outside touch and even suck its own thumb, as well as yawn. At this time, the unborn child becomes a fetus rather than an embryo. At 11 weeks, the eyes, mouth, and ears have formed, and the baby can even smile. At 15 weeks, the baby can detect outside light even through closed eyelids. At 24 weeks, she has taste buds. At 27, the baby is inhaling and exhaling amniotic fluid, which is practiced for breathing in the outside world by expanding its growing lungs. The baby can smell and produce tears at 28 weeks. At 32 weeks, it has eyelashes, fingernails, and toenails. By week 34, the baby sleeps and wakes in a regular pattern with eyes opening and closing. Week 35 is when the baby's reflexes are fully coordinated and developed. 90% of babies born at this week will survive. The earliest baby to survive premature birth was James Gill, born at 21 weeks and 5 days gestation. Look at all these milestones. How can anyone look at these and say that life does not begin at conception? It is so clearly a human being from well before birth. Some like to argue that the baby is a parasite, which until recent years could have been widely accepted. It has recently emerged that while a baby is in the womb, if the mother suffers severe organ damage, the baby will send stem cells to repair the damaged organs, thus proving it is actually a symbiotic relationship rather than a parasitic. Even if this fact is discarded or discredited, you can argue that a child was forced into a state of dependency, meaning the baby did not ask to be conceived. It was conceived by your own carelessness or ignorance. An analogy I've heard that I believe applies very well to this situation is, if I forcefully tie a rope to your wrist and at any point in the next 9 months I decide to cut the rope, you die. You never asked me to put you into that state of dependency. If I cut the rope, you die immediately. If I were to cut the rope, I would be charged with murder, correct? In most states, if you kill a pregnant woman, you will be charged with double homicide, meaning one count for the mother and one count for the unborn child. In the majority of states, an unborn child is to be considered a minor under the age of 12 for punishment purposes. So can you explain to me how in one wing of the hospital there is a little girl who never got a chance at life being aborted, treated with total disregard and treated inhumanely, while on the other end a baby boy is being born, given full human rights and protected by law? How does a 9-inch birthing canal determine the difference between human and non-human, alive and not alive, protected by law and treated with total disregard for life? Does life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness only apply to those who are wanted? A wantedness should not determine the difference between life and death. In Iceland, only 1 or 2 babies diagnosed with Down syndrome are actually born. That's nearly 100% of unborn babies diagnosed with a mental illness losing their right to life. In Denmark, the number is 98%. In France, 77%. Would anyone like to guess the percentage in the United States? 67%. 67% of babies diagnosed with Down syndrome will be aborted per year. It's sickening, it's heartless, it's discriminatory, and yet somehow legal. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 prohibits discrimination, so why does it not apply to these innocent children losing their lives every single day in America? In the United States, African American women are 5 times more likely to have an abortion than their Caucasian neighbors. A recent study released by Protecting Black Lives believes that the following correlates directly to the alarming numbers. 79% of Planned Parenthood's abortion centers are located within walking distance of African American or Hispanic neighborhoods. Planned Parenthood targets minorities for a profit. Black women make up 14% of the childbearing population, yet account for 36.2% of reported abortions. According to the Department of Public Health of every state that reports abortions by ethnicity, Black women disproportionately lead in the numbers. Just a few examples are Mississippi. 79% of abortions are given to Black women. In Washington, D.C., more than 60%. In Georgia, 59.4%. Alabama, 58.4%. Again, shouldn't the Civil Rights Act of 1964 apply to these unborn babies, especially after a heartbeat is detectable? One of the possible solutions will be to take the money funded into Planned Parenthood and implement it into the adoption centers or the foster system. When an abortion costs up to 15 times less than the entire adoptive process, it seems to be a very limited field. Why not overly fund the adoption centers, instead of the profitable business of abortion? If we as a pro-life community got in contact with our state senators and other government officials, we could get this new solution passed within a matter of years, saving over 1 million lives in just 2 years. While I'm not saying abortions should be completely banned, I'm suggesting we implement a federally mandated heartbeat bill, which makes it where once a heartbeat is detectable, abortions are banned. This truly seems to be the least we could do to save lives. To reiterate, nearly 300,000 to 600,000 abortions are performed per year. I'm suggesting we take the funding from Planned Parenthood and implement it into the adoptive or foster care system. If any of you are interested in learning more about the topic of abortions, there are many readily available websites. My personal favorite is liveaction.org, and one like this, where you can get these statistics. If I've only left one message with you that stuck to you from my speech today, let it be this one. Planning your parenthood should not involve an extermination. It is not about a choice, it is about human preservation. Thank you all for your time.